Well, howdy, and welcome to another episode of I'll Go If You Go. I'm your host, Emily Harwitz. On today's episode, we're heading back up to Northern California to hear from two former Redwoods Rising watershed apprentices, José Juan Rodriguez and Verenice Sanchez, who spent their time in the field, splashing around creeks, counting salmons, and getting wet. I was fascinated by both of their stories on how they got into working in the outdoors in the first place, because it wasn't the obvious choice for either of them. They were both apprentices last year, so where did they go next? What are they up to now? We'll get to hear about that too. We had planned to record in Redwood Forest in Arcata, but it was raining, so now we're in the Save the Redwoods League office in McKinleyville. How's it going? How are you both doing today?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
Estoy muy agradecido de estar aquí. I'm very grateful to be here.
How did you know you wanted to work in conservation?
So for me, it was longing for something I never had. I grew up in a big city. I grew up in Mexico, and coming to the U.S., living in Long Beach, California, huge metropolitan area. It wasn't until I went into my high school class and my teacher said, you know, if you could do anything in the world, like what would you do and how could you turn that into a career? And I thought, I'd love to spend time outside. I'd love to, breathe in the purest air I could. And then at like 16, 17, I found out that, hey, you can be a wildlife biologist, you can study zoology.
How did you find out about those job options?
Oh, our teacher put us to work. She sent us to Google and she told us by the end of the class, you have to have like 10 possible career choices. And of course, I was like, video game designer or like, NFL star. And then I was like, zoology, like what? I love Steve Irwin. I know his work. And so it was very exciting to hear that that's a career choice.
Yeah, so for me, I also grew up in a big metropolitan area. So I was born in LA and I was raised there for quite a few years. And I remember it was just like all pavement and one tiny front yard that my grandma had, and I would spend most of my time out there. And so that's kind of where I developed this love and appreciation for the outdoors and for bugs and all things nature. And honestly, I really never thought that I would make it to have a degree in science. And it all started for me when I was in junior college. I was actually a semester away from transferring out to get my degree in business administration. One day I was just really sad and not really feeling it and had to ask myself, is this what you want? Is this really what you want? And I remember I was taking an environmental science class and something inside me just lit up and I thought to myself, this makes me excited. I want to do this. And so I went to my counselor and we talked about options, and I was just excited and enamored with the idea of environmental science. That's kind of what stood out to me. And after that, I transferred here, after a couple years, and that's how it started.
Is there anyone else in your family who works in the environment? I'm wondering what your family thought when you chose to pursue these careers.
Tu primero, man. You got to tell them.
Oh, man. No. Short answer. My mom didn't graduate high school and my dad has his GED. And they were both very supportive. And I have some extended family that went to university, but nobody had ever tried to go for a science degree or anything related. I think for them, pues fue un orgullo. They were very proud of my decision to go to school. And I think what happened is it kind of inspired other people in my family to go for it too. And so one of my cousins ended up going, and she ended up going the route of sociology, but she got her degree in social sciences. And then my little sister-in-law switched her career from nursing to geology.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that was really awesome. And so I think what it did is it showed other people around me that we can do it. And we can really venture out of our comfort zone and follow our passions, because a lot of us are interested in nature, or a lot of us want to do this, but I don't know why, se nos hace un imposible, it looks like an impossible task. And I think a lot of times it could be things we would see these shows on Discovery Channel and stuff, but we never really saw anybody that kind of looked like us, or anybody around us that was doing this. We just did it. We're whatever, we're going to do it anyway.
Representation matters, and that's why you're here, and that's why we're all here. And, I think, first of all, your cousin rocks. for changing to studying geology.
Oh no, for me, little sister-in-law.
Yeah, you know, she rocks.
Yeah.
I know a thing or two. Similar to you, like I didn't really have family that studied anything in the environmental field, but you know, I had a couple aunties or uncles that went to college. You know, they were lawyers or, you know, very traditional roles, but it was very, you know, respected and looked up to, like, go to college. And, you know, my family and I moving here to the United States, like in sueño americano, you know, the American dream. And so for my mom was like, son, please just go to college, you know, do your education. And so when I brought this up to them, at first they were confused. They were like, ¿qué es eso? I mean, I didn't even know how to translate it, you know? Because also that's one huge thing.
Yeah, that is one thing.
There's no direct translation for a majority of majors. And so half of the time, like, wildlife biology is biología de la vida silvestre. And I didn't learn that till my second year of college. And so I guess back to your question, like, how was my family supporting of that? I think at first they were a little confused, but then they saw that it lit a fire in me and that I was like, I want to help the entire world. Like, wow, mama, like I didn't know all this was out there for me. And I want that same feeling for my little cousins, my best friend's children, you know, my best friends are having kids. And I'm like, I want these kids to grow outdoors and loving it.
So what are you both doing now? Well, I want to hear about Redwoods Rising first. What was the Redwoods Rising apprenticeship like? How did you find out about it? And what did you do?
We were watershed apprentices. I heard about this through Cal Poly Humboldt while I was a student there and applied and got in. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. It was my first field job and I learned so much and I took so much with me.
I found out about it kind of, and for me, it was like the ultimate, you know, Hail Mary because it was my last semester of college at that time. Due to some personal reasons, it was tough for me to apply to other positions. And you know, this came out of the mist and it was like Redwoods Rising. And then I hear about this informational panel and I show up and it's like almost an entire 70-person lecture hall is filled up. I remember asking about that and then like going through the application process. And so it was through Cal Poly Humboldt, just seeing a flyer and then hearing other people that did it in the past and, you know, knowing that, wow, water, like I studied wildlife, so it was a little bit out of my field, but thanks to the informational, some other students were like, dude, I'm an engineer and I got to do this watershed apprenticeship. So that's how I heard about it.
Yeah.
And what was a typical day in the life?
Woo! Typically what we would do is our main job was to do stream channel assessments in both old growth sections of Redwood National Park and the areas that were freshly restored. We would just take a whole load of measurements. We would go in there and...
You'd be in the water?
In the water, in waders.
How deep?
It depends.
It depends.
You know,
like up to your waist?
I mean, we dunked our waders a couple times.
Yeah, so it could be anywhere from our ankles, you know, all the way like past our chest.
Waist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm really happy you brought up like where our streams were because and those assessments that we did, I don't remember all 27 of them, which I think was the exact amount, but it did vary between like habitat, visual assessment, so trying to understand the vegetation that's growing there. It came to understanding the microhabitats, so we'd identify large woody debris. So for example, you know, large trunks that were left there in the stream provide microhabitats for different types of fish.
And amphibians.
Exactly. With that, we'd do amphibian visual surveys, and we'd also do fish surveys, specifically looking for endangered salmonids like Chinook, coho. And, you know, we do that through electrofishing.
And through snorkeling.
And
we got
through
to snorkel.
Snorkeling. Yeah, tell them a little bit about that.
Snorkeling surveys. Yeah, so we would go and basically drop in and look for ponds along the river.
Are you in a wetsuit?
And we're in a dry suit, actually.
Yeah, way better.
Which way better if it doesn't have holes in it, because I got a couple field days where I was finishing completely soaked in the field because there was a hole in my dry suit. But hey, that's just part of the journey.
Yeah. and you know, I think it was tough too because with this additional equipment, we were hiking like what, over 3 miles to one certain location.
Oh yeah, easily. I'm not really sure, but
Yeah.
it felt like 3 miles
Yeah.
with 30 pounds of equipment on your back. And
Heading one way, and
Yeah.
then you also have to take into consideration the backcountry here is extremely tough terrain. You know, you don't know if where you're stepping, you're gonna sink to your knee, or if this log you're walking on is solid enough. And so I think that was what a regular day kind of looked like, right?
yeah, it was a lot of walking, and then you would get to your stream and you would get to work. And then once you were done, you were packing up and you were hiking out the same way you came in most of the time. Is all pure just our legs, just our legs to carry us there.
Yeah.
Most of the time. We also had some pretty fun encounters out in the field. I got to see 7 bears this season. I got the record number for
You're
bear
gonna bring
sighting.
that up, although you're gonna flex on them.
I'm gonna flex on them. I'm gonna flex on them.
Wow.
And yeah, we also did eDNA sampling, which was pretty
No, yeah, that was
amazing.
From stream samples?
Yes.
Yeah.
So eDNA stands for environmental DNA, and that's where you're looking at what kind of DNA is in the environment, and that tells you
Exactly.
what species you're looking at, and it's a really great way of doing biodiversity assessments without having to interfere with wildlife's lives
Yes.
or have a biologist out there, like manually sampling and tracking. So that's really cool that you're using eDNA out here.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we got to do. We did eDNA, we did the stream channel assessments.
And then we'd also get to join different projects such as the dragon larva surveys.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'd get to work with people
Dragon or
from
dragonfly?
Dragonfly.
Dragonfly
Like,
larvae.
well, I wouldn't be
I wish there were dragons
Out
here.
here in the
That'd be sick
Redwoods,
or
I wouldn't be
something.
surprised.
Wow. Maybe a long time ago. But yeah, dragonfly larva surveys, getting to collaborate with other scientists that came by from USGS. And I think that was a lot of fun. And then, always we all kind of had this personal vendetta because we knew that by the end of the summer, by the end of our field seasons, whenever that is, we want to have completed this amount of streams, because without these stream surveys, it's really hard for any logging to be done in that area because we don't know what's in the stream. And we also want to make sure that, this is part of a team. So if the watershed crew doesn't get our stuff done, the forestry department might fall behind and vice versa.
Is that logging like restoration logging?
Yes. So what you have to do in order to be able to daylight these streams is remove trees. Because historically what happened is this area was logged so severely, and the stream channels were covered, trees grew over the stream channels, and so now in order to be able to open those stream channels and get water flowing again, you have to remove trees. You have to thin around them to open up the area. And so to create the characteristics and help accelerate natural succession, you have to be able to go in and thin. So it's a management strategy, but it's all for conservation.
How did this Redwoods Rising apprenticeship experience influence your career direction?
For me personally, it really opened my eyes to the importance of connecting landscapes in my mind and in conservation, and the importance of looking at not just 5 years, but 10 years, and also being aware enough to look back in history and know how we can do right from our wrongs. And so that's something I really loved. The holistic approach is something I took away. I was a wildlife lover and somebody that was really just wanting to study large carnivores. That's my heart. Or like from bears, gorillas, and lions, but to learning to appreciate banana slugs, small salmonids in the stream, yoys.
Young of year.
Young of year.
Yeah.
And so a holistic approach is what I really took away from this.
For me, I'm an environmental science background, and I really just wanted to go out there and put my hands to work. I learned about this theoretically, right? But now I wanted to see the application in real time. It exceeded my expectations in so many ways. It opened my eyes into a different world too. I had the opportunity to see and get closer to water, to streams, to see how important it is to have them run free and unobstructed. Also, seeing all the amphibs. We were always on the look for salamanders and frogs and
How many salamanders would you say you've seen in your life so far?
Oh my god.
Ballpark.
I don't know, over
Over the
100?
summer?
Over
Yeah.
the summer,
I think
definitely.
easily over 100. I mean, coastal giants the size of my hand, you know?
I never saw the terrestrial one, so I'm pretty
Oh,
jealous about
man.
The
that.
size of your hand.
Yeah, and you
You're
know,
big.
like I can
I'm so
almost grip a
jealous.
basketball, so those were pretty big, you know, coastal giant salamanders, getting to see some ensitinas, and so that's the holistic approach. Like I'm so happy for the crew I had out there with me, and you know, all of us, because everybody brought a little bit of a different passion. We had people that loved botany, people that loved herbs, people that loved just streams. And, you know, I loved wildlife, and we all got to learn from each other. And so that was incredible.
So it sounds like this was a really great experience for both of you. What do you think makes a good workforce experience? Like when students are looking for a way to put their environmental studies into practice, what do you look for? What advice would you have for them?
Bring every ounce of passion you have towards loving nature, because that's how you put your best foot forward, and that's how your team's going to know you're there to ride and you're there to really just learn. You know, I had to learn a lot about safety outside. I had to learn a lot about how to communicate with my team members in, you know, high stress scenarios. I always remember that at the end of the day, my coworkers love this old growth, magnificent forest, and I want to help protect it with them. And so that's really what helped me get to form a connection with my coworkers and my peers.
So I would say something similar, like just throw yourself in there. You already have one thing in common with the people that you're going to surround yourself, and that's a passion for nature and a passion for conservation. And everything else just arranges itself naturally, I think. But also throw yourself out there. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, be honest with how much you can take on, and don't be afraid to tell people when you're not comfortable with something. Because I'm somebody who didn't really, again, like being in a big city, I didn't really learn how to swim and stuff very well. And so I remember one of our trips, we were gonna do a snorkel down the
Redwood Creek, which can get pretty deep, like
can get
over
pretty
15, 20
deep.
feet deep.
Yeah, and so thankfully it was in the summer, so it was low flows, but I was very nervous. I remember like I couldn't sleep for a couple days, and I was like, should I tell them? I signed up for a watershed crew. Like, what am I going to say? And then it was like, no, I have to. And I'm glad I did, because another two people spoke up and said, we're also kind of worried about that. And so you never know. You might not be the only one who's thinking about these things. So don't be afraid to speak up.
Sounds like a really great experience. And now both of you have completed your Redwoods Rising apprenticeships. Where are you going next?
So I was so incredibly blessed to be able to start a position doing snowy plover monitoring. I got hired through Student Conservation Association, and right now I'm reporting to the Arcata Fish and Wildlife Office. So I'm going to be doing that for the next 7 months, monitoring their breeding throughout the season. I'm very excited about that.
They're so cute.
They are. Yeah.
Do you have like any plover fun facts?
The dad, actually, the male, is the one that rears the chicks. And he does this really cute thing when there's like a predator in sight, where he stashes his babies. And then he comes out and he's just like, nothing to see.
Magic.
Yeah, it's so cute. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told.
I love that. Shout out to bird dads.
I know.
Shout out
bird
to
dads.
penguin. And in my case, actually getting to work with Redwoods Rising was incredible. And after that, it really left me in this place where like, oh wow, like field work is something I want to certainly continue. And at this moment, I wanted to take some time to reflect on my experience being outside and do some things like this, communicate with people. And so Cal Poly Humboldt has started a new fellowship, and I was honored to be the first person to partake in the Multimedia Communications Fellowship. In this position, I'll be able to work as a scientific journalist, so a little bit like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And get to talk to a lot of the incredible grad students we have and undergraduate students, some of our alumni, about the scientific research they're doing, about their hopes for their projects. And I think that's something I'm very passionate about, because I got to do some undergraduate research on the California condor thanks to a grant from Save the Redwoods League. And it opened my doors, and I wanted to keep talking to people about it, and it was hard to find a platform, and so I want to provide that platform for people, whether it's through videos, podcasts, or short written interviews. That's what I'm going to be up to right now.
You spent some time in the Redwoods. Well, now you spent a lot of time in the Redwoods.
Yeah.
But what do you remember about your first trip to the Redwoods?
Oh, man. So when I was a little girl, I read this book, and it was called Where the Red Ferns Grow. And they used to talk about this place with ferns. And the first time I walked into the forest, I almost cried. No, seriously, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the place from the book, and also the place from my dreams. So that was...
Which forest?
So I just went up to the community forest, but when I went to see the old growth, I almost fell back. I'd never seen anything like that, and it was just such a beautiful place. I can't even put it into words. You just have to come and visit. That's all I gotta say. Vengan a ver los árboles.
Vengan. Están muy bonitos.
Están bien bonitos.
My first time visiting the Redwoods, it was the turning of a new chapter for me, because it was when I came to my freshman year here at Cal Poly Humboldt. I was 18. This was the first week-long vacation I had ever taken with my moms since moving to the U.S. We had never left LA County, and we hopped on the road for an entire week because, it was my first time to San Francisco. It was my first time coming to Humboldt. And when we got to Humboldt, we went to the Arcata Community Forest. I left my mom's in the dust. I ran to the nearest stump, and I just roared. I just growled, and I gave my best Tarzan scream, and I was crying out of joy, and I started jumping and running like a dog with the zoomies, and I had never in my life experienced anything like that. It was a true magical playground straight out of Peter Pan or something. And after working in the Redwoods for an entire season with everybody, I knew I chose the right place. I love Humboldt. Humboldt's home. These Redwoods are home. I'll never forget my first time.
I feel like Redwoods have that effect on people. There's a point when you look up, you just kind of stop processing how big it is.
Yeah.
The mind just goes blank.
My grandma came to visit for graduation in May of 2023, and she said in her 80 plus years of living, she had never seen something that beautiful.
Wow.
And
that's so
she was like, "Me estoy mareando," like I'm getting dizzy looking up, and so. They have that effect.
They really do.
Yeah. So what do you think makes a good Redwood park, like the experience?
I'm happy that this question's included, and I hope that whoever's listening to this has their own thoughts, because it really varies per person. It varies depending on what you're expecting from your visit. I remember attending this one meeting with some other community leaders in the area, and for some people, they want to have open spaces where their kids can play outside and have a family barbecue. For me, myself, and I want to be able to get down to the water. I want to be able to get into a little, river and, hopefully have that access.
I feel that parks are an amazing opportunity to be able to get out there, especially for those of us who grew up and lived in cities and are looking for a space to enjoy this. What I would like to see is like information, something that tells you a story of conservation, a story of what it took to get here, to get these places to be what they are. But that also sometimes includes uncomfortable history. And I think I would like more acknowledgement, especially with nuestros hermanos del norte, like our northern relatives and like the indigenous people in the community. That's something that I would like to see, and I'm seeing come together, our history and how we're making it better and how to communicate that.
I think we all want to enjoy these Redwoods, and I think we should find a way to enjoy them together.
This has been such a wonderful and inspiring conversation. And now we're coming to the lightning round, and I have 3 questions for each of you. First question. You've both had a long relationship with Redwoods. If you could work in another capacity in the Redwoods, what would you do?
I want to study gray wolves returning into the redwoods and see how they are adapting to this new environment, because it's very different than it is when they first were here.
Well, I want to tell that story.
So I've heard that there are their own ecosystems up in the canopy, and even though I am terrified of heights, I want to go see that for myself. I would love that.
Yes.
Like that one species of salamander that only lives in the canopy of old-growth redwoods.
Yes, exactly. So that would be amazing. We'll see.
All right. If you were a redwood, where would you be and why?
I would be a redwood off of the newly daylighted creek off of Davison.
Oh.
So I could shade and create like salmon refugia and make it all pretty over there.
Yes. I was a redwood. Where could I be? Could I be anywhere?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
I'd be in Mexico.
Ooh.
You know, I'd take redwood.
What kind of redwood would you be?
I mean,
They don't have redwoods.
they
in
don't.
Mexico, no?
They don't. But they told me if I could be a redwood anywhere, and so
Yeah.
I was
Well,
like,
are
I
you
would
gonna
take
be a
this coastal redwood,
Okay.
yeah, and like just center myself in Ensenada, Baja California, the town I grew up in,
Oh.
just to show them like, yo, you know, we're here, we're standing, and so I'd love that. If anything was possible,
That's beautiful.
that's my
I love
unhinged
that.
answer.
Mhm.
You're going to spend a day in the redwoods. What are 3 things you're taking with you?
Ooh.
Mm.
My binos to look up in the trees, see if I can see anyone cool up there. And some snacks.
Ooh,
What kind of snacks?
Yeah, what kind?
Ooh, I love goldfish, so let's just go with that because it's a lightning round.
No soggy sandwich.
No soggy sandwiches, no please. I had too many of those.
Yeah.
And let's see, my third thing, a friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I guess you're not things, but
Yeah. No. Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite person. I'd bring my wife to the redwoods,
Aw,
and
so
then
cute.
I'd bring. Can I bring some croissants?
you do love croissants.
Yeah, croissants. Just a big pack of croissants. My wife and my favorite jacket, because it can rain, but you know I want to have a waterproof jacket and also a jacket that keeps me like at a good temperature. So yeah, I'm a simple guy. Yeah.
And I guess your wife can bring as many things as she wants. We didn't give her this prompt.
Exactly.
There you go.
See,
There you
plot
go.
twist. Plot twist.
There you go.
Thank you so much for all of the energy that you brought to the conversation today and that you're putting into the work that you do. And I'm really excited to see where life takes you and where you go next in the redwoods and beyond.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on I'll Go If You Go, a Save the Redwoods League podcast. This season is produced by Leslie Parra and hosted, edited, and sound engineered by Emily Harwitz. Thank you to Adam Kaplan for tech support, and Caleb Castle, Marcos Casanieras, and Mary McFeely for graphic design and media support. Theme song and music are by Nu Nguyen and Annie Fung. You can find seasons 1, 2, and 3 wherever you listen to podcasts or on SaveTheRedwoods.org, where you can also find transcripts of each episode. If you like our show, please rate and review. It helps more people find us and join in the conversation. For behind the scenes and bonus content, follow us on Instagram at I'll Go If You Go Pod. If you have comments or questions, you can email us at outreach@SaveTheRedwoods.org. We'd love to hear from you and maybe even share your comments on the podcast. And that's all, folks. Catch you next time.